What if I told you that I love all three of the original Matrix trilogy, even the third one that a lot of people hate, that I think actually wrapped up the story and the lore quite well, and I've been a fan of the movies ever since for about 20 years now, however long it's been since they come out. I remember when the original movie came out in 1999, I was a little kid, I remember watching it on VHS. Yeah, I'm dating myself pretty hard right now, but I remember watching it on VHS. I actually remember watching it with my 80-year-old grandfather at the time who had no idea what was going on, and I think I kind of broke his mind while he was watching it. But that's besides the point. Point is, I was open to the idea and super excited of the Matrix Resurrections. But of course I know, as being a movie fan as I am, anytime you add the word Resurrections onto a movie title, that's usually a recipe for disaster. Halloween Resurrection, Alien Resurrection, there's a bunch of them. Matrix Resurrection. Okay, all right, so whatever, but we'll just put that aside for a moment. But the fact that we had at least one of the Wachowskis coming back, we had Keanu Reeves coming back, Carrie-Anne Moss coming back. That's about. There's one or two others, but it might be a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it right off the bat in this video. Basically, I'm going to give a little bit of an overall thoughts and opinions on the movie, and then I'm going to dive into spoilers because this is the kind of movie that you can't really talk about without talking about spoilers. Kind of the same thing with Spider-Man, though. With Spider-Man, how I feel like that movie more or less lived up to all the hype and expectation that was behind it. This movie falls very, very far short of that. There were some things that I really liked about it. However, I think overall this movie is an absolute mess and does not even hold a candle to the original trilogy. It doesn't really continue the story in any meaningful way, and it just felt like filler. And I think maybe that's part of the idea. Maybe that's part of the whole meta idea behind this, and that they didn't want to make the movie, but they felt like they were forced to, or else the studio would have rebooted it or remade the original. But in all honesty, that probably would have been better than getting what we got here, because this is like a mixed bag of both the member berry syndrome, which I always call when movies just kind of play on nostalgia and remember this, remember this. This movie does it to an absolute obnoxious degree, to the point where they're actually showing snippets and clips and scenes from the original movies as you're watching this movie, to the point where every time they show a clip, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I could be watching. That's what I missed. That's what I loved about this franchise. And then it comes back to the actual movie that you're watching, and it's an absolute mess. What can I say without spoilers? I'll say this. I'll say the story is it's not really worth the price of admission. I'd say if you have HBO Max, go ahead and watch it on there. One of the things about The Matrix that always went above and beyond was their action sequences and fight scenes and choreography and everything that those first three movies did. They literally revolutionized action movies in the 90s, or the end of the 90s in 99. They incorporated things from Japanese media, from Ghost in the Shell and a bunch of other anime, manga inspired stuff, brought it over to the West and gave us something that we'd never seen before. So the level of expectation for action sequences is really high in this movie. Not to mention the fact that you have Keanu Reeves, who, John Wick, anybody? The last three John Wick movies, which is probably the greatest action franchise that's running today, if not ever. With the amount of intensity that Keanu always puts into his fight scenes and Keanu's great in this movie, by the way, but the amount of intensity that Keanu always puts into his action scenes, choreography, fight scenes, stunt work, all that is not utilized in this movie. They don't use Keanu Reeves in a way where Keanu can showcase what Keanu can do. The fight scenes in this movie are they're bad. They're horrible. The fight scenes, the fight choreography, none of it looks good. It looks like it was a made-for-TV movie. It doesn't feel I know I might have watched it on HBO Max, so maybe that was part of it too. Maybe it would have looked or felt different in a theater, but you don't have the amount of incredible action sequences that The Matrix is primed to give us. The martial arts choreography, you don't have it. The chase scenes, you have a chase scene and one kind of nifty thing happens during it, but for the most part it doesn't even hold a candle to the highway sequence from The Matrix Reloaded. You have cameos from past characters that just make them into being an absolute joke. You have a lot of inconsistencies and things that don't make sense about, bringing it back from the original three and how it incorporates into this. And so, it's really hard to talk about without talking about spoilers. But the basic gist of what I can tell you, what you get from the trailers is, so Keanu Reeves is back as his character as Neo, but he doesn't know that he was Neo. He doesn't remember anything about the original 3 movies. He's back in the Matrix. So that's all within the trailers, whatever. In this version, and this might be a very minor spoiler. I'm just going to say this like real quick, and it's not really a spoiler because you find out in the first, 10 minutes of the movie, but I'm giving you a chance now if you want to skip this, skip over the next 2 minutes. So Keanu plays the same character, Thomas Anderson, but now he's a game designer who created a game series called The Matrix. And they start to do this real meta thing with it where The Matrix was this renowned, critically acclaimed, amazing, it wasn't a movie franchise, it was a game series. And now they're coming back and they want to create a new Matrix, so they're bringing him in to do it, and he doesn't want to do it. And there's this whole meta thing going on where Warner Brothers is forcing us to do it, so if you don't make the next Matrix game, then someone else is going to do it. And it's just it just becomes this whole weird meta thing. That's the only word I can think for it. But there's a way you could have done that I think would have been better than this movie. Anyway, so Keanu's there, and they're keeping him suppressed, within the Matrix. They're giving him the blue pills and everything. And so basically this whole movie is getting Neo back out of the Matrix, reminding him who he is, and then dealing with the Neo and Trinity stuff. That's this movie in a nutshell, as far as no spoilers go. So there's that. That's basically the plot of the movie. They show a lot of stuff from the original 3 that you miss about it. The action sequences are not very good. And by the end of the film, it kind of ends, again, no spoilers, but it doesn't really end in a place that makes you either, optimistic or pumped about the future. It just feels like, oh, okay, that's where we're at again. So super let down by it. But anyways, I'm going to talk about spoilers because that's the only freaking way to really talk about this movie. So, all right, let's get into it. Okay, so this movie is a mess. And here's the whole thing. The whole premise behind The Matrix, the whole idea behind it is this sort of commentary on how our life in society works, right? It's always been a commentary on how either the government controls us, corporations control us, and how we are comfortable living within a system that consistently lies to us, but the lies are comforting, they're familiar, we go along with them to the point where we would even be willing to die to protect the lie, right? It's about how we are used for our vitality, for our energy that's fueling the system, which is the machine world, which is an allegory for, life of how we just kind of go through the motions, we do what people tell us to do, we go through the system, we go through schooling, we go get a job and whatever, and we just do this 9 to 5 life and just kind of pumping through where we're kind of brain dead, really, just going through the motions. Meanwhile, all of us working really, really hard powers and energizes the source, which is, the rich elite, the top 1% that kind of rule over everything. And that was, to me, always what the allegory for The Matrix is. That's why you take the red pill, so you can see so you're a puppet, then you can see the strings, you can break free of the strings. In The Matrix, the strings are literally metal tentacles that are jacked into your freaking mind that you have to remove in order to see the real world for what it is. And if you live freely within the world, then things are not going to be consistent for you. They're not going to naturally work out in a normal functioning way. Things are going to be a little bit chaotic, but you're going to be free. And so that's kind of the choice behind it, right? In this movie, so at the end of the third movie, Neo sacrifices himself because he's the one. He's an anomaly. So the Matrix, everything that we know, everything we feel, it's all fake. We're all just living in a tub of machine cum, and we're fueling the machines, right? So Neo was this anomaly that could do all of these fantastical, amazing things. He's the one, and so he's willing, he's sort of a religious type figure, a Christ-like figure that sacrifices himself in order to reboot the Matrix and sort of begin this process of awakening everybody. This movie takes place, in 20 years later or whatever it is, and the architect, which is Neil Patrick Harris's character, the new architect, I guess, or the one above the architect, has created this world where he's resurrected Neo and Trinity. I've only watched this movie once, but let me try to understand this. So you resurrect Neo and Trinity, but you wipe their minds of what happened, and the key is that you have to keep them close to each other for things to function, but you can't have them actually know each other. And so they're in this loop where they go to this coffee shop and they talk to each other, but they don't know each other, and somehow that makes the system all run fine. And then somehow on the outside of that, in the real world, things have continued. There was like a civil war between the machines. I don't know. Everything is given to you in exposition that happens really fast, but none of it is really focused on, because the movie is only focused on, wanting to free Neo and Trinity. It doesn't really focus on the behind the scenes. It doesn't really focus on what's been going on in the machine world. It doesn't focus on any of that. And it primarily focuses on being like a meta commentary on itself, how people want a new Matrix movie. We don't want to give them a new Matrix or a video game in the movie. We don't want to give them a new video game. What do we do? And it just becomes like, redundant and silly. And then like all these scenes happen where, like I said, they're trying to awaken Neo and, the Morpheus program. That's why there's Lawrence Fishburne isn't in this movie, because it's not the real Morpheus. It's a Morpheus program that's in the Matrix. That he comes out and he recreates the scene, and they're literally playing the scene from the original movie while the scene is happening in this movie. And it's just like, how much like meta can you get? You get like a meta within a meta within a meta. That's the word I'm going to use the most in this review, because that's what it was. But like, it wasn't really compelling or good. And I didn't really understand what was the purpose of, is Neo is still the one, but now they've retconned it in a way where he can't be the one without Trinity as well, and they're both kind of the one at the end. Not that I don't enjoy their love story and everything, but like within this movie, they make it such a prime like focal point, but they don't really explain anything that's happening beyond that. Like the entire like first half of this movie is getting Neo awakened, and then once Neo is awakened, he's like, well, now we have to go back and get Trinity. So they got to figure out all these things to go back and try to convince her, which happens so quickly, so abruptly. Like, she's not really a main focus of this movie for the first two acts, and then all of a sudden in the third act, like, we're supposed to really, really care about her character, when in the first two acts of the movie, really all it was just Neo thinking about her. But now, and nothing's wrong with her acting, it's not her acting ability, but the things she does is so strange. Like, she's just completely unaware of all this stuff, and now all of a sudden she's like, yeah, let me just go for it. And then what I hated too was when they added in the Agent Smith character, which was now in the body of another person, which, again, didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And he was sort of this outlier in the movie because, number one, his impressions of Mr. Smith were just not as good as Hugo Weaving, like, at all. Then also, he would come into the movie at random points, and I couldn't really tell what his goal or objective was. The only thing I could think of is that he's just programmed to be an antagonist of Neo, and so that's why he was fighting Neo. Then, let me get into the fight scenes. They're awful. The fight scenes are horrible. Neo, okay, so Neo needs time to remember that he's Neo. I got that. But he's still, and he doesn't seem to have all of his powers and abilities on point. It's whatever. Okay, so we got to build towards that again. And that's the thing, too, that's annoying, because the entire first Matrix movie, the original, spent the time training Neo, getting him up to speed, getting him to realize who he was. So that way, in Matrix 2 and 3, we could actually have Neo doing these fantastical things that he does. This movie takes all this time to kind of relearn Neo again, so we got to go through that a second time. And that's the thing too. That's why this movie felt pointless, is because it felt like it was just doing all the same stuff that the original movie did, but not as good, and especially not as good when it came to action sequences. And that was my biggest letdown of this film. And the fact that, like, action scenes from 20 years ago, 1999, 22 years ago, however long it's been, were better than in this movie. Like, Neo doesn't even really fight in this movie. He does a little bit, but then most of it is just, he's just force pushing the entire film. And I was worried about this when I saw the trailers, because that's all it shows him doing. He's just like creating force fields and force pushing and stuff like that. And Keanu Reeves knows martial arts. Like, he's a fighter. Also, Keanu Reeves rides motorcycles. So, I mean, I know that Trinity rode motorcycles in the original trilogy, but, like, if you're going to have a character drive a motorcycle, like, Keanu Reeves can do this shit. Like, anyways, so the action sequences were they were small. They felt small. Like, they took place within this warehouse where they have these weird, this is where the Frenchman comes back and he's played as a joke, and nothing is ever resolved for that. He comes in with one scene and then goes away. And then the Smith character is in for like 2 scenes and goes away. And like, all of it is just boiling down to the fact where, like, the architect just wants them in the Matrix because it makes the Matrix work better. And they're like, no. like nah. And then and then he gets Trinity free, and she's got the one powers now too, because both of them are together and it's not just Neo. And she looked cool while she was flying, I guess, but it just didn't. I didn't understand, like, there was no purpose to this movie, and that leads back into the meta aspect of it, where in the beginning of this film they're talking about how they don't want to make another Matrix game, because in the movie the Matrix are video games, so they don't want to do it and they have to do it. And that's how this entire movie felt. It felt like it was something that they had to do, that they didn't want to do the entire way through. And by the time the movie ends, what is it? It ends in the same place that the first movie ended. Okay, they're awakened now. Now what? Are we still going to work on freeing humanity? Or, you know, I don't know, man. I just felt like it kind of like backtracked and ruined the lore of the third movie. And then I was thinking, you know, if they wanted to go full on meta with this, I feel like there's so many better ways that they could have done it. Like, I was thinking while I was watching this movie, I was like, you know, they have Keanu just be this game developer guy, but what if they went like the full 9? And like some people have been saying this movie is kind of similar to New Nightmare. I don't think it is. I think it should have been more similar to New Nightmare. So, you know, what if they made it so that the Matrix movies were movies, and then as AI has developed over the last 20 years and became sentient, what if they used the Matrix as their kind of guideline of what to do? So what if the machines took over in a world where the Matrix movies existed and then created their society based upon those Matrix movies? And what if Keanu Reeves was like, if not playing himself, or like playing a character that, you know, had to sort of, basically playing himself, you know? What if you did it so that, like, Keanu Reeves actually became Neo? I know that's probably stupid. That's probably lame. But it's probably not as lame as the setup for this movie. And a lot of it felt like a joke. A lot of it felt like it was making fun of itself, which I didn't appreciate, because I take those 3 movies seriously. I do. When I watch them, I think they work really well as a trilogy. And like I said, I even love the third one. And I think the third one like pulls everything together. I think it shows that, you know, that self-sacrifice of Neo, that sort of rebooting of the Matrix, his, you know, and everything that happens there. This movie completely invalidates that, but it doesn't invalidate it to push the story further in any meaningful way. It just invalidates it so that we can say, here, there's another Matrix movie. And there's something that I really, really didn't like about that. Now, the good things about this movie are Keanu Reeves. He's great in it. He falls right back into place as Neo. There's nothing wrong with his acting performance. Carrie-Anne Moss, she's Trinity again. There's nothing wrong with her acting performance. But yeah, everything else was a bit of a letdown, man. I was pretty let down by this movie, and I didn't want to be. I was stoked for The Matrix 4 like real bad. I was anticipating this movie pretty hardcore. I love the trailers for it, but it just didn't do it for me. So that's my review, guys. Let me know what you think. If you watch The Matrix Resurrections, just that's it right there. Like, anytime a movie has resurrection in the title, like, it's done. Like, you just know it's not going to be good. But anyways, if you guys have seen it, what are your thoughts, comments down below? Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you liked it, that's totally cool. I don't have a problem. I'm not trying to like be out here convincing people not to like it. Everyone's free to have their own opinion. In case you're new to my channel or anything, like we're all free to express ourselves and give our opinions here. So I don't care if you liked it. That's totally cool. That's totally fine. But if you did like it, comment down below why you did. And if you didn't like it, also comment what you didn't like about it. Do you agree with what I didn't like about it, or are there other things about it that you didn't like? So comment that all down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I would really, really appreciate it. Other than that, guys, hope you all have a wonderful day, and please take that red pill.